Awesome. Way to go. You're a pretty good guy. Pretty good guy. I don't know about the sunshine, though. There's something else about the sunshine. We'll talk about it later. Yeah. It's a good group. I love coming here. I don't get to talk on stage very often, so I'm thankful, I'm honored, I'm humbled to have the opportunity to speak and share a little bit of not my story. Sam, where you at? You gonna give me my graphic? It's all right, I can wait. I got all night. Corey said I was good. That's right. There we go. Not our story, but their story. So for those of you who don't know, we have 3 beautiful children, all 3 adopted. And so tonight I'm going to tell you their story. Thank you, Allison. So I'm going to tell you a story of our adoption process, our fostering process. And what I ask for you from you tonight is that if you are a birth mom, if you are an adoptive mom, if you are a foster mom, just give me a little grace. If I say something that might be on your toes a little bit, I will do my best to honor all parties involved and still tell the truth. And sometimes the truth is hard. So who believes the entire Bible is true? That's what I'm talking about. So in James 1:27, it says, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after the orphan and the widow in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted from the world. I not only believe it, I got it tattooed on me. Because what I believe about the Bible is that it's all true, and the things that are in it are not suggestions. Those are things that we should carry out. And so because adoption is one of the things that God has laid on my heart, this tattoo gives me a great opportunity to talk about my kids all the time. Same way as the ladybug. I'll tell you about that later. So let me tell you a little bit about mine and my wife's story. We have been married for 22 and a half years. Thank you. Yes. We met in high school. So yes, I married my high school sweetheart. But that's enough about us, because it's not about us. So if it's okay with you, can I tell you a story? Yes. Thank you. So feel free to participate as needed. So I'm going to tell you a story. And forgive me if I get emotional. It's not because I'm sad. It's not because it doesn't have a happy ending. It's because when things happen to your kids or your family members, those things still hurt regardless of how long it's been. So let me tell you a story. My mom loved me. She was encouraged to abort me. It was free even. Carrying me to full term was illegal. My mom could have gone to jail just for having me. But I know my mom loved me because she kept me. All 9 months. She gave birth to me. And I know that she loved me because she dropped me at the orphanage where someone would find me. The ladies that found me that day were really nice, but I was scared. I was alone. I didn't know what to do. So I just cried. There were other girls at the orphanage too. I stayed there a few weeks, and then another nice lady came and picked me up. And she took me to her house. And I came to know that lady as my nanny. I lived with my nanny for 10 months. And she did everything with me. She spoiled me even. She took me everywhere she went. We watched a lot of kung fu movies, listened to a lot of music. I even convinced her to let me sleep in her bed. But that's how much she loved me. She spoiled me. One day, it was a different day. I went back to the orphanage, got to see some of my friends that were there. And we got in a car. I'd seen those. Nanny had shown them to me. Got in a car with some of the other girls. and we started driving. And we drive for hours. Now, I'd never ridden in a car before, so this was a brand new experience. We get to this big city. We go in this big building, go up to this room, and everybody's crying. All of my friends are crying. The orphanage workers are crying. There's some strange people in the room. They're crying too. Never seen people that look like this before. The only thing I can figure is they must have been scared too. We were all crying. I didn't know what to do. Well, they handed me to this man and this woman. We all cried. I guess we were all scared. So they took me back to another strange place, strange smells. They did their best to try to take care of me. They bathed me. They tried to feed me. I don't think they could read very well. They didn't give me enough formula. They just gave me like one of the little scoops, and there's supposed to be 3 or 4 in there. I kept trying to tell them, but they wouldn't listen. So I was hungry. I was scared. And every night, we would walk around, and I didn't know how to talk. I kept screaming for my nanny. Nanny! Over and over and over again. She wasn't anywhere around. It took a few days, and I finally got to know this man and this woman as my mama and baba. So for those that don't know and haven't picked up on it yet, my name is Lily Grace Davis, my first child. And I am Baba. And for those of you who don't speak Chinese, mine is Chris over here. Baba, Chad, is Chinese for father. And this ladybug is the international symbol for Chinese adoption. So when people ask me, hey, why do you have that ladybug on your hand? Man, I get to tell them about my kid. And there's no greater feeling. Raise your hand if you're a parent. Yep. No greater feeling than talking about your own kids. It's an amazing experience. So Lily's Bible verse is, for it is grace, by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God. And I'm telling you, she was a gift. Stephanie and I have been married for almost 10 years before we brought Lily home. And man, we just weren't worthy. We didn't feel like we deserved it. That's what grace is. We just didn't deserve it, but we got it anyway. And man, we won the lottery with that kid. So if anybody that's ever met Lily and she's spoken to you, man, you feel yourself very, very lucky. She is a sweet, sweet child. In Psalms it says, defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. And I believe that's what we tried to do there. But because her name is Grace, we thought we were blessing her. Man, she turned out she blessed us. She blessed us. So our firstborn's from China. Our second is from Chattanooga. There's going to be a theme here and a test at the end. So I see a few pins, very few. So our second and our first son, and I say first because we told God no for years. Every person we met, are you all going to adopt again? No. Have you lost your mind? That was hard. Took us 3 years to get that one. We had to fly to China. No, I'm not doing that again. But just like God, and just like his humor, we were planning a trip to Disney World. So we go to Disney for Christmas every year. It's kind of our family tradition. It's our family trip. And that's what works best for us because our family is whacked and jacked, as Pastor Chris talks about. And so that works for us. So we're starting a new tradition. And so we were planning to go to Disney World, and I get this random text. And it's this little girl had been abandoned at the hospital. in the town that we live. And the text read, "Do you want her?" I'm like, "Oh, crap. Yeah. All right." So I called Stephanie. We talked about it. And so through the course of a few events, we couldn't have her because we weren't part of DCS. We hadn't gone through our PATH classes. We weren't approved yet to be foster parents, which turned out to be okay. But that trip to Disney was a little bit different. We were prepared and ready to take a brand new baby with us and didn't go, so there was just kind of this emptiness that we didn't know existed. So just because we didn't get this little girl, what happened was, just like the Grinch, our hearts grew, and now we had this desire to adopt again. We didn't know it was going to be through DCS, but reluctantly, we did sign up for our PATH classes, and we left our little prized possession at home with someone while we went to class, and I hated every minute of it. Nobody in their right mind goes to the government and says, "Please tell me how to do something," much less raise my own kids. But that's where we found ourselves. And I told God, "I'm not doing this." And he said, "Yeah, you are." I said, "All right, I'll go this week." I go this week. We would be pulling out of the parking lot. I told Stephanie, "I'm never coming back." I get home. God said, "Yes, you are." Every week. I remember one Saturday morning, I was on the treadmill, and it was over 3 hours we wrestled back and forth. I said, "I'm not doing it." And he said, "Yes, you are." I said, "I'm not doing it." He said, "Yes, you are." I said, "I'm not doing it." "Yes, you are." I said, "You're not listening. I'm not doing it." He said, "You're not listening. You are going to do it." I said, "Okay." And by faith, not knowing the outcome, we did it. Week after week after week. Not wanting to go, but knowing that God told us to go, so we went. And so we finished up our PATH classes, got our home study done, got approved. And then a month later, we're at FP Kids Camp at the giant slip and slide with hundreds of kids when I get the call. It's from DCS. I had the number saved on my phone. They said, "We've got this little boy in the hospital. Do you want to come get him?" I'm like, "Well, kind of at the slip and slide right now, so let me call you back." So I walk over and I start sharing with Stephanie that there's a 5-week-old baby boy at the hospital, and she just starts crying. So we never dreamed that we would be able to foster a little baby or adopt a little baby. And here he was, 5 weeks old. She's crying. And so I'm talking with my wife, and my daughter over here is doing this number. I'm like, what is that? And just like a child with childlike faith, she said, "I've been praying for a brother." Y'all are clapping now, but we didn't have no boy clothes. All girls. We didn't have anything, which was fine. She's like, "Okay." So I called the lady back. We pack up one day early. We go pick up Jordy at the hospital. And we walk in, and I remember Miss Pearl. She was a caseworker there at the hospital. She showed us back to the NICU, and Jordy had been in the NICU because his mom had done a lot of meth. And so for those of you who do or don't know, meth causes a lot of premature birth. So Jordy was born at 31 weeks. He was a little over 3 pounds, underdeveloped lungs, whole 9 yards. So he had to be in the NICU just so he could continue growing. He wasn't fully developed yet. So we go in, and he's in his crib, and I'm going to call it a crib. It wasn't really a crib, but I'm going to call it an incubator because he was still cooking a little bit. No lid, kind of like when you get done with your meal. You've got it, take the lid off, it's just simmering. So he's there simmering, all swaddled up He's about this big. We're talking to him. This will be the hard part. Lily says hello. He shot that arm out of that blanket and grabbed her finger. And I'm telling you what, God birthed something that day between those two that will never be broken. You're right. There were some dark times going through the fostering process with Jordy. We met with his birth mom several times, and they were mostly good visits. There was one visit where Jordy was teething, and he sucked on her arm a little too long and got high and then had 2 days' worth of withdrawals. That was a bad visit. There was a visit when the birth dad came. And if you've ever been in this room where you're watching these birth parents, and I say that with love, not in a negative way, holding your child, but it's their child, and so you have empathy for birth parents while it's your child, it's the scariest thing in the entire world. But watching him tell her that he was giving up his rights and she didn't know, having to watch that, being able to talk with him afterwards. Jordy's parents were good people. Good, kind-spirited people. Broken people, but good people. They just couldn't do it, didn't know how to do it. So there was a court date we didn't show for through the advisement of our caseworker. Birth mom showed up. She'd been clean for 7 days, so she was good to go. I want him back. Jordy been with us for a long time. He didn't know anybody else. So I was planning my escape. Are we going to Florida, going to Cuba? I just didn't know. I genuinely didn't know what that was going to look like. But several months later, we were able to follow through with the adoption of Jordy. His birth mom sat with us. She was so excited. Sat with us, we held hands, we prayed together. And I don't claim this. It wasn't something that Stephanie and I did. But she was clean for the first time in her life. And she's still clean. Jordy's Bible verse is 2 Corinthians 5:7, for we live by faith, not by sight. It's Jordy Walker Davis. In Proverbs it says we have to speak up for those that cannot speak for themselves. And that's what we did for him too. He was too little. Oh, my mercy. We get to Daisy. Who has had the pleasure of meeting our third child, Daisy? Raise them proud. Raise them proud. Oh, yes. Okay. So Daisy Hope Davis, I'm going to sum her up in one word. Hurricane. For those of you who have had a third child, you'll know what I'm talking about. Your third child is something special. It's just God made her third on purpose. She'd have been first, she'd have been out. She goes hard all the time. If you remember the old Flintstone videos and where they're running and their feet never touch the floor, that's Daisy all the time. She gets out of bed, boom, there she goes. Feet never touch. I don't know how she gets. She hovers. It's part of the Jetson clan. I don't know. She hovers. But during our darkest time, through our process with Jordy, Daisy came into our life just like a hurricane. I was upstairs in a meeting. It's 1:30 in the afternoon. The DCS workers put the biggest, prettiest bow on her head. Sent me a picture. Oh, you get it. I'm talking about the big bow. Little head, big bow. She's big brown eyes. I said, oh, crap, here we go again. And 3 hours later, she was being carried into our house. 3 hours. That's right, 3 hours. Instant family of 5 in 3 hours. It was crazy. But let me tell you a little bit about Daisy's story. She's a fighter. So she was a twin when she was in her mama's womb. And her sister died about the 12 to 14 week mark. So even before she came out, she was fighting for survival. She fought in spite of the drugs that got put into her system. And she made it. Born early, but she made it. She came out. She survived. She came to live with us when she was 3 months old. She could feed herself. She could hold her own bottle. Because if she didn't, she would not be here. She was left alone so often, it was feed yourself or die. And she lived. She's a fighter. Those first few months, she slept with an eye open. Think about that for a minute. Those big brown eyes. She was with us for about 4 months. And I still remember it. I was changing her diaper and I was done. 4 months was the first time she looked at me. And that was when I fell in love with her. She finally looked at me. And I'm like, let me love you. Let me love you. I just want to love you. Just look at me. And she finally looked at me. And she let me love her. Now, mind you, she's hard to love most days. And some days she takes medicine, and some days we do. Just don't tell the doctor. But Daisy will always fight to be heard. It doesn't matter if she's with us by herself or with her brother or sister. She wants more attention than we can give her. She wants more love than we can give her. Because there's a hole in her heart that can't be filled with my love, or her mother's love, or her brother's love, or her sister's love, or all of you who know her can't fill it. It's too deep. It's too wide. Only God can fill that. So we are praying one day and we hope that one day that will be filled with God's love. Daisy's Bible verse is be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Jesus commands us in John, a new command I give you to love one another as I have loved you, so that you must love one another. And by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. See, adoption is not my story. I just get to participate in it. Adoption is God's story. And he showed us. Moses was adopted. Esther was adopted. Even Jesus was adopted by Joseph. I mean, just think about that. Even our Lord was adopted. He's setting the table and teaching us what it means to him and what it means to our Father to be adopted. But Joseph didn't get it either. What he did was he walked by faith and he obeyed what God told him to do. Because God's not afraid of our story. He's not afraid of your story. And he's definitely not afraid of their story. He will use my kids' stories to reach somebody. This is one of my favorite songs right now. If you know Anthony Evans, so this is the version I'm listening to. So if you're familiar with So Will I I could see your heart in everything you've done, every part designed in a work of art called love. If you gladly chose surrender, so will I. I can see your heart a billion different ways, every precious one, a child you died to save. If you gave your life to love them, so will I, and so will we. Because in James it tells us to look after them in their distress, whatever that looks like. I'm thankful that God designed each of us that are willing to step out and do those things. But living out James 1:27 doesn't mean that you have to adopt or foster. You can do those things. You can pray. You can advocate. There are a million different ways that you can partner with the adoption community and look out for those that don't have a voice. And so I'm just thankful that he chose me just to be part. He chose Stephanie to be part. And he'll never leave you, never forsake you, just like he didn't leave my kids. He carried them all the way home to my house, all three of them. I'm going to try to wrap up here and just tell you, if you don't know Jesus and you've never accepted him as your Savior, that using my kids' names, you can receive that free gift of grace. Today you can walk by faith, not by sight. You don't have to know, you just have to believe. And you can hope that tomorrow will be better. You can even hope that right now can be better. This very moment. He's ready to adopt you. Are you ready? Are you ready to let him be your father? Are you ready to, like Daisy did, just to look your father in the eyes and let him love you? Let him love you. Because I can tell you, he's got more love than we can even absorb. He wants to stand up for you. He wants to advocate for you. He wants to fight for you. But most of all, he just wants to love you.